Welcome to the Box Score Sports Podcast.
Yeah, let's do that because we got a lot to talk about today. So we might as well just like jump into it and let's just start with the NBA Finals because I don't think you haven't been on the podcast since the finals started. So get some of your takes, but we'll kind of focus on the last three games. The Thunder take a 3-2 series lead against the Pacers. The Pacers were up 2-1, lost the last two. I got a couple of notes here, but let me start. What are some takeaways that you've seen from the series so far, that's kind of caught your eye, or maybe even something that might be resulting into the what we see as far as the 3-2 lead for the Thunder?
The Thunder, after going down 2-1, have put their stamp on this finals with kind of what you expected. I picked them in five. The last three games are kind of more what you expect to see from the Thunder in this series, just slowing the Pacers down, just harassing them. I mean, Halliburton's hurt now, but they've really disrupted him. He can't seem to figure out Lou Dort. But just that physicality that the Thunder bring has really stood out, mainly the last two games, where they, while not blowing out the Pacers, um, game four they got a pretty big lead, but felt in control of these games to the point that at least I didn't feel like, oh, the Pacers are going to win this game. It just felt like the Pacers are going to throw some punches, but the Thunder have it figured out. And between Shea and J Dub, especially last night or two nights ago, was just hard to overcome.
Yeah, well, to be fair to Halliburton, when there's an NFL linebacker playing defense out there, it's a little hard to figure that out too. You're like, what sport am I playing? But I agree with you. The defensive intensity has sort of ramped up for the Thunder. They get moments on the offensive side of the ball where they're a little stagnant, and I think that allows the Pacers to come, with those their runs, and that's why they get the game close again, right? Because when their offense is going and humming, the ball movement's really good. But one thing I did put down is the coming out party for Jalen Williams is in full effect, especially the last three games. The first two, he only had 17 and 19 points off of 35-31 shooting. But in the last three games, he's got 26, 27, and 40 off of basically like 50% shooting. It's, if you add them all together and then divide it by three. So it's about 50% shooting. And so Williams has really stepped up to be like that number two option for Shea. So when Shea doesn't like either have it or he's getting tired, Jalen Williams has been able to kind of like take over the last couple games, and really that's, I think, one of the biggest difference between the first two games and the next couple of games that we've seen in the Thunder.
For sure. I like his decisiveness. I think that's kind of what's changed. And it's tough when you play, with a person who was the MVP and Shea, or when you play with any of these guys. Sometimes, do I go for it? Do I kind of sit back? But they have figured out a good two-man game. And when they get the matchups, either of them is just taking what's there, taking advantage of it. And Jalen Williams and Shea played good in game five, but he was just decisive. He got to his spots. And you can just see, like you said, a coming out party. Dude is really good. And when he plays like this is, the Thunder we talk about when we optimize what the Thunder could be is when you see this. And Chet kind of comes and goes. But again, it's hard to be third fiddle. But if you get Jalen Williams playing like this consistently, I think you see the results.
Yeah, and he's only 23, by the way. And like when you talked about Chet, he's 22, and like these guys are only going to, those two especially are only going to get better, which is kind of scary to think about. You would assume that both of them would get better. I definitely think Chet will get better. Like you mentioned, Shea, I think he's so far the MVP of the series, although Williams has had sort of a coming out party, 32 4, 5. But here's what I thought was interesting: 2 steals and basically 2 blocks a game. Maybe one of the most underrated things about Halliburton, I was going to say SGA, is that on the defensive side, he is not a liability. Where he kind of holds his own, which I think it helps with the team and what he's able to do with deflecting the ball and blocking the ball. So right now, if the series ends, when do they play Thursday night again? Yeah, if the series ends Thursday night, Shea's still the MVP, but it's nice to have a number two like Williams. So um,
For
the
sure. SGA's really been really good in this too because they're fine switching him on the Siakam and he has the size and he doesn't just get put under the hoop and that goes a long way of kind of slowing down. They've done a good job of slowing down the Pacers ball movement by just switching at the end. I think it was the end of game 4. They let Chet switch out onto Nemhard and Halliburton, and he got roasted the one time, looked bad, but Halliburton airballed it. But he had 2 or 3 possessions where he looked solid. And sometimes if you can get the Pacers or the team you're playing to just switch what they're doing, which was effective at that game, the Pacers just went one-on-one, and you're not going to beat the Thunder with the players the Pacers have. They don't have that overwhelming one-on-one score like other teams. So if they devolve into that, you pretty much have them where you want them.
Yeah, it's almost like that's sort of like their missing piece. So let's talk about the Pacers because, well, okay, anything else on the Thunder side? Obviously their depth continues to show up. Like they'll have a bench player in the last couple games. I think Wiggins was pretty important. I don't remember if it was last game or the game before. Hit a handful of threes. Obviously Caruso and his defense. Speaking of linebackers, he's not a liability offensively. I think game 4 he had a better game offensively, but defensively he's always doing doing what he does, which is slowing down the offense. He had that one really good play last night where he like stole the ball and then he dived for it, poked it out, and then like dived for it and got the steal. His hustle. Anything else on the Thunder before we move maybe off them and talk a little bit about the Pacers?
No, you're right. They've done a good job of their role players has switched. Like Caruso sucked offensively game 5, but Wiggins and Wallace combined
That's
for
what I said.
7 of 11 for 3. And you go back to other 2 of the games, Caruso was really good, scored 20 or 22 points, and that's what you need, and that's what the Thunder have. And like I said, I picked them, and then after I think it was after game 3, part of me kind of wanted the Pacers to win because I kind of hated the Thunder's approach to like they seem to come in like this is our series, and you're like you're not just going to walk over the Pacers with that attitude. But this version that we have seen, game 4, game 5, is the Thunder that you go. These are probably the deserving champions when they play like that.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk about the Pacers side. The big note, I think, and this is like the big talking point that everybody's kind of hitting on, is the Halliburton piece. Is his style of play, his approach to the game is. I like how I think Bill Simmons mentioned it, where he's like a Steve Nash, where he wants to get 14 points, 14 assists. In a series like this, it's harder to do that when you're being pushed, like guarded by like who they have the guard, Halliburton. Last game, I guess he got injured. What, in the second quarter? Was that when he fell? And okay, but regardless of when he got injured, he was 0 for 6. He didn't score a single field goal. He had 4 points. That's kind of the big story coming out of the Pacers. There's still another level that if Halliburton wants to be one of the best players in the league, he has to hit. And maybe it'll be an off season before he gets there. But again, he's only 25. But it's just that it's at times he's just very complacent and not aggressive.
Yeah, and that's an excellent comparison. That Steve Nash, even Chris Paul, more like a modern Chris Paul type of like these guys don't want to go out there and put up 30 shots. And that's what makes their teams really good. But similar to Steve Nash, similar to Chris Paul, um, there's a ceiling to it, and maybe Halliburton can get through that ceiling, as time goes on. But when we talk about teams, and like Steve Nash always came up short for similar reasons, teams would get physical with them. And he was a smaller player. Halliburton's not that small. But if everything isn't clicking, sometimes it's hard for those guys to switch into the I got to put up 30, I got to put up 40 tonight. which he's capable of doing. We've seen. So in a series like this is kind of what I envisioned. It's gone longer than it's probably about to be over if Halliburton's getting an MRI and stuff like that. But
Right.
we've kind of seen the fallen away of the best player wins the series. But the way the Pacers are built with their style, it's been super effective. But when you run into a team like the Thunder, when they are locked in, you kind of need that guy that can bust through that and just be more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, they kind of need that one guy who can kind of like get his own. Like Matherin had a huge game. Was it game three, game four, like game three? I think it was game three where he scored like 27 points, and it was like he was that one-on-one scorer that would like maybe like when they needed somebody to make a play, he was kind of that guy, right? Siakam has a little bit of that to him, but he also has sort of a ceiling about him. We kind of know who he is, and even though I think he's having a really good series for Siakam, um, it's not enough of what they need, and that's what they need kind of from Halliburton. But I just don't know if he'll ever be wired that way. So like when we talk about if it happens that it ends on Thursday night, it'll be interesting to talk about what they should do moving forward in the offseason. Should they just let these young guys progress together, whatever they do? I don't want to get ahead of myself, but um, I guess like what's got to be a little frustrating if you're Halliburton or Pacers fans is like if Halliburton had a mediocre game last night, they could have won. And the fact is it's almost like, well, you're kind of the reason now your team lost because you didn't put up any points basically, that you weren't aggressive. And I don't know how much the injury affected him or whatever. I'm not, we'll know more about that when his MRI is up. But that's gotta hurt. That's gotta hurt. Is I guess my point is like, man, you almost had game five if you would have been any good.
Yeah, we always talk about, especially in the new NBA where we have seven. This is going to be the seventh or the eighth different champion. I think seven. Where sometimes when you get there, you never know. And if you're the Thunder, you probably have a good outlook. But again, the West is tough. But for the Pacers, you're going to look back at that end of Game Four, and if you pull out Game Four, and I kind of misspoke, the Pacers were in control of Game Four. The Thunder kind of clicked at the end.
Right.
That might have been your shot,
Yeah.
to go up 3-1. And again, maybe it doesn't matter if Halliburton in the long run gets hurt anyhow, but that part of me kind of feels bad for the Pacers because you're like, I was watching that and I'm like, the Pacers are going to win the final. Like, I can't believe the Pacers are going to do this. And the Thunder pulled out Game Four, and I think it's going to be one of those that you look back and just be like, crap, man, we were right there. And that might be your one shot to get a chip your whole career because you never know what's going to happen. But you do feel bad, like you said. If you play better, maybe you have a shot at Game Five. And if he's not, if he's hobbled, I think everyone's kind of in the same boat that we ended in Game Six. But I hope, as much as I'm not a big fan of the Pacers and Halliburton.
Yeah.
I hope he's healthy because nothing would be more exciting than in Game Seven.
Agreed.
Just to see two teams, desperate young teams. So you don't know how pressure is going to help or hurt, but I think we're trending towards this is over Thursday night, and the Thunder are going to get their chip.
Yeah, especially if Halliburton's out. I think if Halliburton's in, I could see the Pacers kind of, and maybe the Thunder also think, oh well, why don't we just wait till we get home and celebrate it with it? Dangerous to do that, but they're, like it could be a little bit of complacency, but we'll see. Okay, anything else about this series that you want to hit on before we move on?
No, I think this is, despite what you see on ESPN or other things, like this is kind of the finals that if you're a basketball fan, you like. It's been said on other podcasts, but this is kind of cool to see. Both of these teams aren't even jacking tons of threes. I think what was that Game Four where there was like 17 and both teams shot like under 22 threes
Yeah.
attempts. So you get to see a variance of basketball and skill, and I think these are the things that the NBA misses when it doesn't kind of market like the NFL does, because these are two really good teams, contrasting styles with similarities, different stars, different types of stars. None of these guys on all these teams are just 3-point chuckers.
Right.
As much as Steph Curry is awesome, you have variants of style. So I think it's actually a really cool finals, that you get to see that you can still play this way in modern basketball.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool that they're so, like, even their best players are just so different in Halliburton and SGA. It's just like so different to watch them, and I think it's kind of cool. So I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay, just let me just go on. Let's just talk about one more thing, and that is the officiating, because that's also been a subject in the finals. But I'm gonna like, for anybody who's watching the video, I'm gonna cut it off there so that they don't. Thanks so much for watching this clip of the Box Score Sports podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter or X, and we'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.